So, when did you first realize that play could be that secret for truly engaging learners in science?
So whenever we have learned something, the primary years, we have always learned it through play. When I was like a lot involved with what I want to do in life and stuff, at that time I saw this movie called Three Idiots, and a lot of people are influenced by this movie, and I was too.
Once you finally switch off from your lab or classroom, so how do you recharge yourself? Are there any go to hobbies, rituals that help you refill?
When you're working for your passion and you are driven by your passion, it might be cliche, but the work recharges you.
TEDx Conversations is a space where we sit down with people who have great stories, ideas, and questions that get us keep thinking. At TEDx IIT Gandhinagar, we believe that often big changes often start with simple and small conversations, the kind that stays with you, challenge you, or shift you how you see the world. Season 3 brings together the voices that are exploring new paths, asking bold questions, and rethinking what's possible. So settle in. We are here to learn, reflect, and maybe even change our minds together. Hello and welcome to TEDx Conversation Season 3. I'm your host, Swamini More, and today we are going to explore a question that often goes unnoticed. What if they stopped teaching science like a formula and started teaching it like a story? Our guest today, Dr. Ansha Bansali, is someone doing exactly that. She is a physicist, researcher, and founder of Beyond Books, a STEM education initiative that sparks learning through curiosity kits, books, puzzles, and toys. With a PhD education from the University of Sydney and over a decade of experience across the classrooms of Australia and India, she is on a mission to turn science into intimidating to irresistible. But this conversation isn't just about circuits and experiments. It's about rethinking how we teach, who gets left out, and what happens when we build classrooms rooted in joy and purpose. Why should education be about surviving schools when it can be about discovering the world? So, whether you are a teacher, a parent, or a student, or just someone who believes in this idea, this episode is for you. So, ma'am, let's begin with the session. You've had the rare opportunity to teach and conduct research in two different universities, the one in Sydney and the other in Ahmedabad. So I'm curious that what have been the most like contracts and surprising similarities about how STEM is taught across these two different educational systems.
Okay, hi. Thank you for inviting me. And yes, I guess education as discovering the world and discovering yourself, I guess, is what the purpose is. I have had opportunity to see the education system and be part of it, experience it firsthand in America, Australia, and India. Striking similarities are because of the colonization that happened. So, reforms needed everywhere. In America, when I went for undergrad, if you did last 5 years exam papers a night before your exam, you could score easily 90 above, and that's what was usual practice there. So of course there were reforms required, but there were good practices as well, where there were 3-hour labs and we got to experience things hands on. So as small a thing as seeing the polarization and blocking sunlight using two opposite polarizing lenses. We were taken outside in the sun and shown that using the lenses, which was a big deal back then, to see things hands on. And that kind of formulated a lot of ideas um, about what I want to change. In India, as everyone has experienced a decade ago, the competitive environment was at its peak when I experienced the high school. And so, experiencing an international way of doing hands on things really was something very contradictory to what I had experienced. I was studying what I in in undergraduate first, second year, I was studying in America what I had already studied in my high school in India. So content wise, they were delayed, but they did go in a lot of depth, and the way their labs work was surprisingly very good for me. But again, there were pros and cons of both the sides of education. In Australia, as I said, due to colonization, you see a similar pattern of brains working. You know how students study in school or university is a lot dependent on what we expect as parents or as a society. So I think everywhere this craze of being a doctor or engineer is prevalent, and the core curriculum and the core examinations are predominantly based on those kind of scoring system, and a lot of how you study depends on how your exams are and how you are being scored. So working on those assessments and creating some change is happening everywhere. In Australia, there are projects like a high school extension program where students in high school are doing a 6 month long research studies, which are where high school where PhD students or master students at universities are guiding the school students for their projects. And there are weekly meetings, monthly meetings, and I volunteered for that through my university. So there are a lot of different programs that are happening to create a change in education everywhere. One more in Australia is recently I came to know of tech schools created by the government of Victoria, where maker spaces, right? So where you learn the relevant stuff for today's times, which is AI or 3D printing or another a lot of different things that you could use to make and create your prototypes for different problems. So the government has created tech schools where the normal school affiliate with that school, and there are like 2 day long programs for the school students to just come there and learn 3D printer and engraving machines and create podcast and stuff. So those kind of solutions are happening everywhere, and that that kind of creates a support to the core curriculum, but core curriculum still needs reform everywhere. And there are various people like Diane Tavener and other people working on it to create a more relevant education system um, everywhere. So, yeah.
This was really interesting, ma. Now let's talk about the moment when your teaching philosophy actually took shape. Like mostly physics is often seen as the most rigid subject by students. But at some point you made the leap to take play as the core component of your teaching. So when did you first realize that play could be that secret for truly engaging learners in science?
Okay, so I've thought of an answer for that question. And the first thing I would like to mention here is whenever we have learned anything, we have lived a long life, you and me both, and all the viewers as well. So whenever we have learned something, the primary years, we have always learned it through play. So we have not waited for the pen and paper and the classroom to write. We just, whenever we got a chalk, we start playing with it and we start writing with it. And that's essentially when the learning happens. So this is not a new concept for anybody in this world that, play will enhance learning. But I would say when I took my subjects, science subjects in high school, when I was like a lot involved with what I want to do in life and stuff, at that time I saw this movie called Three Idiots, and a lot of people are influenced by this movie, and I was too, where I saw that including such very natural ways of learning to learning really helps us lead a better life where we are more aligned with our inherent nature and stuff. And so I think I was pretty sure that this is something I would like to involve, and whatever the first workshop I did in 2015 with kids, that was kind of first experience of mine teaching anybody. So since then, I have had this element of involving play, and that's essentially how I like to And ironically, the last Makerspace session, the whole month that I did was the theme was Gamers July. So we kind of create the kids from the grade 3 to grade 10. All of them learned different ways of technology through creating games. So yeah, I love games.
It's really a nice initiative, that learning through games. Strength. So now let's go back to the beginning. So what was that first moment or a slow realization that led you to create Beyond Box? And what gap in the classroom were you most desperate?
Yeah. Okay, so slow realization and one moment both happened during this foundational year, which was my grade 11. As I said, Three Idiots was something that kind of created a solution in my head for the problems that I saw in my education on the daily basis that I was going through. So I was kind of driven and I could score good naturally. And that kind of led me to taking science subjects and being in a system where everybody um, wanted to become a doctor. So the way they studied and approached the education and the way I wanted to approach it were contrast. मतलब it was one was black and one was white. It इतना ज़्यादा difference था. तो because I was in the same ecosystem in the school with the same people and in tuition classes also with the same people, I kind of realized that I was not given a chance to explore things in my way. I was not allowed to ask questions because everyone was in a hurry, either it was teacher or students, to just go through the stuff and then start, preparing for the exams, and just to score the highest was the goal for everybody. And the exams were such that if you just sit down and memorize stuff, you would score the most. So I was kind of a trouble for them because I wanted to wait and ask questions and understand things. So I'm not sure how it was for them to understand stuff, but for me it was to try out different ways. If there was a problem solved in a particular manner, I would want to ask for a different method that came to my mind. Can we do it this way? And I wanted that time to do it my way and see whether I fail or pass. So all those things were not allowed, and that was kind of a burdensome and restricting experience for me. I felt like I'm not in the right spot. Um, and there were either these brilliant people who just wanted to score the highest, or those people who just didn't want to do anything. And I didn't belong in both the spots. So then this was I always wanted to do research, and I was kind of, my calling was to become Einstein and see the world how he saw, see a little deeper in the world. The metaphysics was right, like really calling me and stuff. So yeah, so I was always sure that I will create an education system where uh, things of this sort are promoted and supported. So yeah, I was always sure that once I have done everything, I will create a school and I'll work for education system.
Your story is really very motivating. Like, this is the need for change, I think, because just by memorizing, we must focus on the understanding the things more deeper. Now, ma'am, your philosophy, it really stands out, that we don't spark students' curiosity, we just don't let it get diminished. So, how you translate this idea into the design of your learning modules and the classroom experiences?
Yeah, so that's my philosophy, that's correct. And that's something I believe in, and I think is the reality. We all have our purposes and we all have our ways to live. And like nature is intelligent by itself. We don't need to train nature, right, to create its solution. It creates it. And we are not in the nature, we are the nature, right? So we also know what problems and what solutions we need for those problems and stuff. It's just that through kind of such a long experience of education, we kind of are deviated from it somehow. So when we are allowed to express ourselves and explore our own ways, I think that's when the deviation could be negated and avoided. So through my workshops or whatever time I get with students, that is what I try and do. Most of the experiences for students are student led. So I kind of spare, when you want to design a really good session, or a really good book, or any kind of educational experiences that is of high quality, you have to prepare a lot. So my training in PhD, as I said, I wanted to create a school when I had done everything in life. But I realized that if you want to make any change, you have to get trained for that. So PhD did that for me. I did PhD in physics education research. So I realized that whatever pedagogies exist, whatever interventions want to do in education, those have to be research based. You have to carefully create the experiences for students, and every little thing matters. As small as when you are doing project based learning with children, the groups that you create, the size of that group matters a lot. So ideal team size is 3, when no one can dominate each other. If you go more than that, then there are few students who are working and few are just roaming here and there. So everything has a lot of details and a lot of care you have to take. Um, for it to be student led, I mean, not to diminish their spark, there are few techniques where you create the experiences where few things are decided by you as an instructor or facilitator, and a lot of different things are decided by students and they are student led. So that comes from the experience and training, that what variables have to be fixed and what can change. But when it comes to students, they should never have an experience of, okay, I was taught this or I was told to do this. They should every time experience that, okay, I could do this through this session. I figured out that this is what I wanted to do and I did that. So, yeah, student led, a balance of active passive in your session. How long your session is. Like I have conducted from 1 hour to 5 hour, 6 hour long sessions. So, there has to be a, like, nature is not flat. There are pulses everywhere, right? So, the balance of active passive has to be decided properly. Very limited amount of time where they are sitting, and depending on the age also, for younger, let's say ग्रेड 7 या 8 तक भी, जितना व्हेन दे आर एंटरिंग द रूम, अगर उनको रिस्ट्रिक्ट ना कर दो, उनका मूवमेंट चालू रखो, देन actually with undergraduate student as well at Sydney University, this is what we used to do for the 3 hour long lab. They were just roaming around the space here and there, and they decided where they wanted to do the experiment. So they were allowed to take the equipment and um, um, roam around the room and select a space where they wanted to conduct. Now what that does is, when you physically restrict someone, उनका माइंड भी फिर शांत हो जाता है. So there are various emotions you have to play with, and that's how you use the space also, their time also, and their bodies also. So yeah, those are the most important things.
You often emphasize the importance of removing fear from learning. So, was there a specific moment, perhaps during your PhD or early teaching experiences, that made you realize that how crucial it is to make the learning spaces free from comparison? Or
Um, when did I realize it? Perhaps during my high school. Before that, I was never called out or stand apart from the class or anything of that sort. I used to score high and I was appreciated. But during high school, as I said, when I wanted to ask questions, that's when I was not allowed to do that. And then I was really standing apart from the class. And somehow then asking questions would have been a fearing experience for me. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty logical and common sense that if somebody is, let's say, you're fearing from me, you'll not be able to have 100% experience of this conversation. So it's as simple as that. Like in life, these are just kids of any age, are just smaller in size, but they are fully grown human beings. So if the intention is to not just educate them, but gnan or shiksha mein jo difference hai. If we are going towards gnan, knowledge seeking experiences, if we want to create, if we really want to make a difference, then fear never helps. It just अगर पूरा रूम है, fear just takes away half the room and then you're just exploring half. And essentially in life also, then that is what happens. So whatever we are training, there is this theory where or a reality where till age of 7 the whole mind is developed, like biologically. Adult size brain is developed in a body. So of course there is bioplasticity, but with time it diminishes and it becomes lesser and lesser. So we are essentially created in our childhood, the core of us, and then it's just extension, and we keep changing through small scale here and there, but essentially we are created. So if we want to create innovative people, especially at this age where AI is going to drive the future, all the human innate stuff is what we want to get out. And we want to create a generation which is able to express those things and create the experiences which are very humane in nature. So, for that, I think fear is the most damaging part. If we are promoting fear, and competitiveness is good when it's healthy, but like to create that charm. I also tell in my class that, the best game whoever has created will get this most innovative award or most. That's just to create that, energy in the body rushing. That's it. When we are really telling somebody that, you were the best and you are scolding somebody, that's you are being foolish and you are restricting the human potential. That's it. So I don't want to do that.
Swam, you have also done a formal research on emotions in the science lab, especially with the AAQ physics tools, which tracks things like curiosity, joy, and even the anxiety in students during the physics practicals. So, ma'am, I'd love to know that how have those research insights changed how you conduct the workshops now, and are there any surprising findings that how students emotionally respond to the hands-on challenges experience?
Yes, so that reminds me, during my research, I have worked on different student emotions, and there are emotions like pride, enjoyment, anger, anxiety, and hopelessness. So, pride, enjoyment, of course, when somebody feels they are going to get better at it. Um, Anger is something that could be used positively and negatively. So, like I said, when there's energy rushing, you can take use of that. And anger is a positive, I mean, it's a negative emotion, but its polarity is high. So, it has a lot of energy in it. Whereas hopelessness and boredom are something which are negative emotion and polarity is also low. So, that's going to hamper when somebody is bored in the class, or they are just hopeless, that, if you as a teacher have demotivated them or they themselves have been demotivated, then if they are like, oh, ye to mujhse nahi hoga, that's when they are not going to pay attention or they are not going to get ahead in those areas. So understanding these kind of stuff about emotion during my PhD was a really helpful tool. What I've seen, so we kind of have created experiences during for undergraduate students at University of Sydney and University of New South Wales. Both are top tier institutes in Sydney. So there were small things. How I started off was, it was my research was my idea, based on what I had seen as problems during my high school, right? And high school and undergrad and masters as well. So I saw that people usually, whenever you say the word physics, they are like, it's too hard. And even if they are good at it, like they can score well, they don't really connect with the subject. So I thought that how I liked the area was because of my emotional connect. I loved Einstein's story. I loved my grandfather who did his masters in physics and how he saw the world. So I relate with the subject through these medium of human stories. And that's how I felt that I got more than just the typical science stuff of it. I could relate what E equal to MC square means, and I could find fun in that. So that essentially equal to MC square essentially means all matter is energy. And that's kind of surprising that we can see each other, we are matter, we can see these things, but it's all energy. So that's very charming as a philosophical knowledge. And I think that's what was I saw lacking everywhere when we are rushing for the competitions and we are just trying to, it's like trying to conquer nature when we can be part of it and have fun. So basically, those were my ideas, and that's why I wanted to work on emotional engagement. And what we did as intervention was when you enter a lab as students, you kind of are given a manual कि आज ये करना है. तो आप striking similarities पूछ रहे थे जब, तो जैसे इंडिया में लैब होता है अंडर ग्रेजुएट लेवल पे, वैसे ही वहाँ पे भी था. तो यू आर गिवन कि आपको ये करना है, ये एम है और ये ऐसे आप करोगे, यू विल कंडक्ट दिस एक्सपेरिमेंट एंड दिस इज the result or this is the table. Of course, when you're given the table, you know what things you want as results. So that's kind of killing the charm in a way. So we revived the lab experiences. We created a little open-ended stuff as well, where we also wanted kids to take qualitative data. So we a balance of instruction and non-instruction. That's how we created the 3-hour lab experiment. So we created whole new lab notes, which were more than just 2 pages and more than just the instructions. There were interactive tables and stuff, and about 5 to 6 pages it ranged. And at the front page, we had a colorful story that kind of talked about all the history. Historically, ये concept, whatever you are working on, how has that been developed? So, first it was a whole cycle from Aristotle to the cavemen. So, my first experiment that I designed was on thermodynamics. So, the cavemen rubbing the stones, from that to current idea of heat as motion of atoms. So, ironically, both are related to motion. You know, that person never knew what atoms were, but फिर भी उसने कुछ motion में वो generate किया. And similarly, अभी हमको पता है कि तो those kind of things when kids read that, then they are kind of charmed by that whole atmosphere or the whole idea. And then you do something when you're connected with it, उसमें फिर जमीन आसमान का difference होता है for the level of engagement and the quality of work. And similarly, then we got good results there, and then we revived the whole labs for, I think we created 8 to 10 lab experiments, and all of them had a different color theme when they came and different scientists, and we brought it down to 3 scientists, 3 generation for each topic and stuff. So it was really fun. It got good results, and we got good emotional engagement, and that kind of continued when recently when I started focusing full time on my startup Beyond Box. This is the first thing I did, involving human stories in my workshops and bringing all those experiences to this book series that we have created, which is called Humans of Science. So each book has STEM activities as in STEM concepts plus STEM skills. So we are kind of trying to create an experiences where you are part of that scientist's life. You are reading what happened with them, but you are part of it. You are also going through the same things. And scientific journaling is something which is lacking internationally. So we have created this book where you are motivated through the book to conduct experiments, and in a small level we want to create innovators, and innovation always happens when you are dealing with your surroundings. So we are not promoting hi-fi equipments, but anything that you find around you. And um, we create observational skills and other skills which are transferable and needed at this hour. So yes, did I answer your question?
This is truly very interesting, that connecting with the nature and connecting emotionally with the topic rather than just learning the formulas and taking the answers of this dialect. Now, like from STEM kids and interactive education, it often comes with a cost, both financially and in case of geographic access. So, how does Beyond Box make sure that the students from rural areas or from under-resourced communities are not left out of this learning revolution?
So I believe that we can create one small change at a time with my books that I've created. This is what I've tried to do. As I said, whatever activities kids have to do once they've purchased a book or once we have supplied it to their schools or them, I have tried to bring innovation, observation, experimentation, and all other skill development that I want to do through STEM areas. Um, um, Through these journal activities where something particular is not required. You can also do that experiment with a stick that you find, or a pencil that you have, a scale that you have, or just something lying around that you see. So, that kind of experiences I've tried to create in all those activities that we have developed for the book. Apart from that, there are things where it's irreplaceable, like finding the pH of the milk and lemon water, where pH strips are required. Even though it doesn't cost much, there are of course places where one small thing gets added to the cost that they cannot survive, and for experimentation you need a lot more. So we have tried to create simulations. So if viewers know, PhET simulation is something that is created by University of Colorado Boulder, and they are kind of only a project happened internationally that support, as far as I know. I have been using those simulation, where simulation is basically where you don't need real things to experiment. There is this online environment where you can trial different stuff, and you can get different outcomes, and that's where the learning happens basically. So, getting inspired from that and using a lot of that in my own sessions, I have kind of tried to create, with help of my interns from Ahmedabad University, um, experiences where we can form the scientific concepts in kids' brain aged 5 uh, to 7 onwards. So, using these pH strips and dropping it in the different substance and getting to know their pH as small as that, for to know how acidic or basic things are, and a lot more projectile motion and watching your frequency. If you are singing, there are instruments like oscilloscope, where we have, as undergrads, I have done my frequency experiments. So that's the only instrument I saw to which showed frequencies. But the relevance of frequency in our life, the first thing is our sound, right? And whatever we hear. So we have kind of brought frequencies down to this experience of singing and watching your own voice on the screen, and rather than oscilloscope, which is of course costly instrument, and there are few available for free online as well, where you see a lot of noise, so it's very realistic. So for kids, I think that kind of takes away the whole purpose of it when you get confused. So we kind of have created a proper frequency with different colors, so sare gama pada nisa, and whatever you sing, whatever your pitch is, based on that you get to see that, okay, this is how your sound looks. And then we have also kind of, there are all the simulation that we have created are in 3 stages. So first stage forms a basis, then on second stage it develops a little further, and third goes till application. In the third stage, there is a song running, and if you're matching those frequencies, how good you are as a singer depends on how clear you are with the frequencies. So then that's how you get the score that you matched or not. So those kind of things I think will really help and will go far with a lot more simulations covering a lot more topics which are real world context based. I think we can also charm students, make them feel like just playing with it while learning a lot.
So when we know that the work like yours is really intense and can be deeply personal. So once you finally switch off from your lab or classroom, so how do you recharge yourself? Are there any go-to hobbies, rituals that help you refill?
Being when you're working for your passion and you are driven by your passion, it might be cliche, but the work recharges you. So I've seen that whenever I have been really busy and there's a lot to do, I'm the most high on terms of energy. So being with kids also is very fun because they are a lot closer to nature than adults are. So being amongst adults might be more taxing than being with the students. But yes, sessions do drive us. I mean, it's taxing sometimes when you have to talk a lot because I'm not used to talking a lot. So I have always been interested in a lot of different things, and I see different things helping each other um, in getting you better at almost everything. So I was always interested in different arts, dancing, singing, painting, and I whenever I have time, I do anything that suits at that time. If I have those resources at that time, I would like to explore that and just have fun. Meditation is something that has been an inherent part for me, not as a strict routine, but something that on and off whenever I feel like I do yoga is something I do. So yeah, I think being spontaneous and just allowing whatever comes to your mind is how I have lived, and I like that way of life.
Now let's fast forward to the year 2035, 10 years from now. So what does success look like for Beyond Box? And what do you hope that STEM education in India and globally would have reached by then?
STEM education has, like, if the viewers do not know what STEM is, it's science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We also add arts to it now. So now it's STEAM education. And then there are few people who add research to it. So it's STREAM education. And then something also stands for last S. So it's streams. So basically, this way of education is kind of a new way, holistic way, a project based लर्निंग, रियल वर्ल्ड कॉन्टेक्स्ट बेस्ड. तो जो भी रेलेवेंट है चीज, वो now it comes under this area which is STEM. Not just limited to STEM, but everything. Financial literacy is also covered these days. So how I see the question is what success looks like for Beyond Box. So Beyond Box is kind of it's my startup, but I don't want to make a multi-million. This I don't want it to be really successful as a business or whatever. I see more of it as a social entrepreneurship, if that's the word, right? So I want uh, that as many students, undergraduate students, uh, could get involved with this initiative and contribute to education, like what we have done very recently at Ahmedabad's topmost school. There are a couple of interns from Ahmedabad University who brought their own ideas that, this is what we are learning. They are doing Bachelors of Science, computer science, and they are bringing in a lot of ideas that I'm not aware of or I'm not trained for. AI, machine learning and creating simulations and all these things. Coding is something that I got to know, but then using these students and their own ideas to create a variety of experiences for students to be relevant. in the coming times is what I see as a success of Beyond Box, creating this whole channel of whoever, whenever is available for them as undergraduate students or master students, for them to be part of an education system is the biggest thing I think we can do as a change. It's a dramatic change that we can do as educators, rather than sticking to the, even if we want to, change the system, when we stick to the same people who have had those um, um, work experiences or training in a certain way, when they are leading the whole industry, I think that desired outcome is not going to be, we are not going to be able to achieve that. So yes, involving the fresh talent and grooming them to be part of this system is what I think Beyond Box wants to do. And I would call out all the young people who want to make a change to this platform in whatever capacity we can support them, we have, and we will always support them. And I think together with the whole ecosystem, if we can bring in that change of creating innovative students, creating those experiences for them where without fear they can explore different stuff and know the relevant stuff for today, which is not going to train them for something that is going to be easily replaceable tomorrow. That is what will be our success as an education initiative.
He's truly very inspiring. So now, all right, now it's time to end with a fun note with a rapid fire round. So just say the first but which comes to your mind. Yeah. So the first question is your favorite physics demo of all the time.
It was this an exploratorium in San Francisco. I got to see this tool where you press a button, so you lose all the control, and that machine would just go here and then, and you press a button and you want it to be steady at a particular point, and it kind of figures out its center of mass or center of gravity and holds it up there. So yeah, you might be able to see that on our Instagram page, but that's very fascinating. Yeah.
One children's book every adult should read.
Humans of Science, created by Beyond Box.
What's the one scientific concept that still gives you goosebumps?
Scientific concept that there is no one particular way of, um, there is no one particular solution. I think that's a scientific concept, but easily ignored in education, and that gives me goosebumps.
The next question is the latest thing that truly surprised you in science or in life.
How people can waste their life in negativity or fear when there is ample of opportunity to explore the bright side, right?
The best compliment a student has ever given you.
That working with me is a therapy.
What's the one scientific myth you love busting with kids?
Uh, Scientific myth. Yeah, this only, that there is just one way of uh, solving, or one solution to one problem is a myth.
What's the best question a student has ever asked you? The one that really made you pause.
If there was no money in the world, if you didn't have to work for money, then what would you do?
Thank you so much, ma'am. This was such a joy. Thank you for your insight. It was wonderful topic. Your energy and the passion which you bring into every learning space. Thank you so much, ma'am. Today's conversation reminded us that curiosity isn't a luxury, it's a right. Through playful learning, student led discoveries, and peerless classrooms, we got a glimpse of what education can look like when led with purpose and joy. This was TEDx Conversation Season 3, Episode 1. If this episode sparks something in you, share it with an educator, a parent, a student, or just someone who believes that the future of learning is bright and beyond the box. Until next time, keep questioning, keep playing, and as always, keep the conversation alive. Thank you.